The Liverpool Public Library presents Getting Started with Libby. Libby is the mobile app that lets you borrow eBooks, e-magazines, and audiobooks from us on your Android or Apple tablet or phone. What if you have a Kindle Fire? Well, I'm sorry, but the people at Amazon made it near impossible to use Libby on their devices. This is because they designed them as ways for you to buy content from them and not to borrow it for free from others. But if you have an Android or Apple device, you're in luck. So let's get started. But before we do, make sure you have your library card number and PIN. Don't know your PIN? No problem. Stop this video. Come see us at the library to set one up for you, and then start this video again. Oh, and one little thing. When you get your PIN, it might be a good idea to enter it in the notes section of your contact information on your smartphone. Then you'll always have your library card number and PIN on you. After all, who leaves home without their smartphone? Okay, now let's really get started. Getting Libby. The first thing we need to do is to get the Libby app. If you have an Android device, you'll need to go to the Google Play Store. If you're on an Apple device, you'll need to go to Apple's App Store. I'll be showing you this on an iPad because it's what I have at the moment, but the process is pretty similar between devices and platforms. So go to your particular app store and search for Libby. You may see Libby by OverDrive in your results. That's okay. Libby is made by OverDrive. What's the difference between Libby and classic OverDrive? Well, I don't want to get into technical details here, but let's just say that in many ways, Libby is a lot easier to set up and use. Anyway, now that we've found Libby, download it. Once that's done, we're ready to find it on our device and set it up. We'll take care of that in the next section. Setting up Libby. When you first open up Libby, there are a lot of things it doesn't know about you. In fact, there are a lot of things it doesn't know about you, and it needs to know these things in order to let you start borrowing eBooks, e-magazines, and audiobooks. For the purposes of this video, we're going to assume that you're doing this for the very first time. So first, we'll tell it that you have a library card. Next, it wants to know your library. So we'll have it search for our library. This gives you a screen where you can enter information about your library. If I enter 13088, it'll bring up all the library systems in the area by how close they are to that zip code. In this case, the first one is the Onondaga County Public Library system that we're part of. It even says so. Select that one, and now you'll be on the screen that asks you for your library card information. Oh, and by the way, from now on, I'll just refer to our system as OCPL. Now, select Enter Library Account Details, and you'll be taken to another new screen where you'll enter your library card number and your PIN. Hit Next, and we're almost ready. The next screen is very important. If you're a Kindle user, it lets you choose whether to send your items to your Kindle device or app, or to open them up with Libby. For the purposes of this video, we're going to do everything with Libby, so just hit Skip. This brings us to the Libby main screen, and now we're going to pause for a bit before we do a little more setup. Libby Settings. Now that we're set up, almost, we have a few more housekeeping details to take care of. First, look for the 5 icons at the bottom of the screen. Right now, we're concerned with the middle one. That's supposed to be a librarian's head. You know, Libby's head. Tap on that, and you'll get a bunch of settings for you to deal with. We'll start with notifications. Tap on Manage Notifications, and you'll get a bunch of different ways for Libby to notify you about things. Right now, none of those are turned on, but Libby really wants you to use push notifications, which is where it notifies you through the app and with reminders on your screen. However, you could also choose email, and it will send you an email message for each notification. I happen to prefer email notifications, but you can go with what you like. If you choose push notifications, it'll give you this screen, which tells you to go to your device's settings, and, at least on my iPad, offers to take you right there. If you choose email notifications, you'll get a box for you to put your email address in, and then hit Next. Once you've set up either way of being notified, you'll see the types of things you can be notified about by the method you choose. You can change any of these, and you can scroll down the screen for more information. But enough of this. let's take care of a few more settings. Do that by hitting the back button, and now we're back to the screen that gave you all those other choices. One of them is your libraries, and under that you'll see the only library you have so far, which is OCPL. Remember, that's Onondaga County Public Library. See library cards and add a library. Yes, you can have more than one library, and we'll talk about that in a different video. For now, let's select See Library Cards so we can change a little something. When we did this, Libby took us to an image of our virtual card, and it shows us the card number. You don't have to have it show that, especially if you have more than one card in Libby. I'm going to change that by tapping on Actions and then tapping on Rename Card. Here we're changing the name on Fiona's card to Fiona7760. This doesn't change the actual library card information that's working behind the scenes. It only changes what shows up on your screen in Libby. Now that we've really gotten everything all set up, let's finally check some stuff out. Using Libby. Okay, now we're back at the main screen, and let's take a look at the 5 icons at the bottom of the screen. But before we look at them closer, I want you to know that you can scroll down the screen to see more stuff, like the different things we have on display, just like the special displays we have in the physical library. You can choose any of those items right now, but let's wait a bit, and notice that no matter how far down we scroll, those 5 icons are still at the bottom of the screen. The first icon is for search. It's a magnifying glass, just like what Sherlock Holmes uses to search for clues. This is how you'll usually search for items. The second one is a library card, and that brings you back to the Libby main screen. The third one is the Libby icon, and that takes you to your settings. The fourth one is your shelf. This is where the items you've checked out or have holds on live. And the last one is your timeline. And we're not really going to talk about that in this video. So now, let's look for some items. Our version of Libby lets you take out 3 types of items: eBooks, e-magazines, and audiobooks. But how can you tell which one is which? And when do you want to borrow which one? Let's take a look at these 2 items by Janet Ivanovich. The ebook version has no special markings on it. It also says Read Sample. These are best for reading on an iPad or some other tablet. You could read them on a smartphone, but I wouldn't recommend it, since you'd be turning the page after every paragraph, and it gets old really fast. The audiobook version has little earbuds underneath it, says Audio, and also says Play Sample. And it's a lot easier listening to an audiobook with earbuds attached to the little phone on your belt or in your pocket while you take a walk than with a big tablet under your arm. Although I suppose you could put that tablet in your backpack and things would work that way. And actually, if you're running the sound through the sound system of your car, it doesn't matter whether you're using a phone or a tablet to listen to your audiobook. I happen to find it easier to listen to audiobooks from my phone, but that choice is totally up to you. Now let's get back to the Libby main screen and we'll talk about searching for items, including magazines, which I know I haven't said much about yet. Searching for eBooks, audiobooks, and magazines. Now we're going to look for a few items: an ebook, an audiobook, and a magazine. We do this by tapping on the magnifying glass at the bottom of the screen. This brings you to a screen with an empty search box. It also tells you what library or library system you're searching in. So what exactly are you searching for? Is it a particular title, an author, a subject? You can type any of them into Libby's search field, and it'll try to come up with something. I'm going to look for something by Alexander McCall Smith, and as I start typing, Libby starts guessing who I might be looking for, so I don't always have to type in the whole thing. Once I see what I'm looking for, I just have to tap on it, and I get a screen full of selections by him. It says here that there are 59 books and 40 audiobooks, and if you look closely, you'll see that each of these is underlined. That means that if you only wanted his ebooks, you would just tap on books, and if you only wanted his audiobooks, you would tap on audiobooks. But we're not going to do either one right now. Right now, I want to take a look at the lower part of the screen. Right now, I see that the first 4 items are out. How do I know that? Because they all say place hold. but maybe our luck will change if we scroll down a little more. And indeed it has. Here I see 3 items that are available to be borrowed. And they're all eBooks because I don't see the little earbud icon underneath any of them. In fact, I had to scroll down quite a ways before I started seeing any audiobooks. Now, if you know from the start that you only want audiobooks and you don't want to do all this scrolling, this is when you would have selected audiobooks from the very top of the page. Let's take a breath now and then talk about actually borrowing an item. Borrowing an item. Here I am, back at the top of the screen, and I've decided I'd like to borrow the Department of Sensitive Crimes. So I'll tap on Borrow, and it takes me to a new screen that shows the book, the library card, and a Borrow button. But wait, don't hit that Borrow button yet. Look at the very top of the screen, and you'll see where it says that you're only borrowing it for 14 days. With most things you take out from us, you get 21 days. Why should this be any different? Well, this is just a system default, and we can change that. Tap on the 14 days, and you'll see that you can choose between a really short 7 days, the current 14 days, or the normal 21 days. If you're a speed reader, go right on ahead and pick 7 days. But I'm going to choose 21. After all, we can always return it early. And now you'll see that that's how long it says you're borrowing it for. In fact, that's how long you'll be borrowing all eBooks from now on. Now you're ready to hit the Borrow button. And with that, you've just borrowed your first book with Libby. Now you have the choice to open the book right now, keep browsing, or go to your shelf to look at what else you have out. But before we go to the shelf, let's keep browsing and look for an audiobook. So here we are, back at our Alexander McCall Smith screen, but this time we just want to see his audiobooks. So we're going to go to the top of the screen and tap on Audiobooks. And now we have a list of 40 audiobooks of his that we have. You'll notice that in addition to the little earbuds, it also shows you how long each audiobook is. And look at how lucky we got. The first 3 items are available to borrow. I'm going to go for the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. The process for getting this is pretty much the same as getting an ebook. Just tap on Borrow, and you'll get a screen just like you did for that ebook. But look, it says you're only borrowing it for 14 days. That reset we did earlier was only for ebooks. We'll have to do it again for audiobooks. So tap on where it says 14 days on this screen, then when you get to the next screen, select 21 days. Then select Borrow on the screen after that. And now you successfully borrowed both an ebook and an audiobook. And now that we've done that, let's take a look at your shelf to see what you have. Great, I see an ebook and an audiobook, but we still haven't gotten a magazine yet. Let's do that now. So how do we look for magazines? Well, if you have a particular one in mind, you could just search for it like you would for a book. Or if you want an idea of just what magazines we have, you could simply search for magazines. Here, I have a screen of over 500 results in no particular order. But if I go to Refine, select Sort By, and then select Title, I'll get an alphabetical list of magazines from all over the world, and many that you've never heard of before. You might even want to scroll through the entire list just to see what we have. But as you're scrolling through this list, you might notice that some items have single covers, while others have multiple covers. What's up with that? It's very simple. The items with multiple covers are the actual magazine, and the multiple covers represent multiple issues of that magazine. The ones with single covers are usually books or one-shot special issues put out by that magazine. So okay, now that you have an idea of what we've got, let's look for something in particular. Tap on the magnifying glass at the bottom of the screen to go to the search screen. Notice that it shows our 2 previous searches. I'm going to look for National Geographic. As with ebooks and audiobooks, it tries to guess what you're looking for as you type, and it shows me 2 listings for National Geographic magazine. One says series and one says title. Which one do you pick? It doesn't really matter. They'll both take you to the magazine. Let's do it. And look at the choices you have. I bet you didn't know there were this many versions of National Geographic. We'll pick the first one. When you tap on that, it takes you to a screen with the latest issue. But suppose you want an older one. That's easy. Just scroll down and you'll see a list of back issues. I'm going to pick March, and now we get a screen that shows that issue. Tap on Borrow, and you'll be taken to another screen where you have to change the loan period. You'll have to do this once for each type of item you borrow for the first time. Change this to 21 days, and then hit Borrow. Once you've done this, Libby asks if you'd like to be notified of new issues. We'll skip this for now and be taken back to the screen that lets us choose what to do next. We'll choose to go to Shelf, and now you'll see the 3 items you've borrowed so far. Now that we've had these items, let's work on reading or listening to them. Reading your ebook. So here we are, at your shelf, and we're going to start off with your ebook. Next to it, you'll see it says Read With, Manage Loan, and When It's Due Back. Tap on Read With. This takes us to a new screen that lets you decide whether to read using Libby, a Kindle app or device, or some other device. We're going to choose Libby because that's where we are. But let's talk about that Kindle thing for a moment. In the beginning, I said that you couldn't use Libby on a Kindle. That's still true. You can't install Libby on a Kindle device, but you can use Libby to shoot the items over to your Kindle or Kindle app. I've tried it, and frankly, that's a lot of work to do if you're already in the Libby app. So we're just going to stay where we are and choose Libby. That makes everything pretty much one-stop shopping, where you borrow and read in the same app. So tap on Libby, and now you're in the book, or at least you're at the cover of it. If you look closely, you'll see a bar at the top and a bar at the bottom. These are controls for navigation. If you tap in the middle of the screen on the book itself, the bars go away. Tap in the middle again, and the bars come back. But to actually turn the pages, you need the bars to be gone. So I'm going to get rid of them by tapping in the middle one more time. Now, as I slide my finger to the left, I go forward through the book. Sliding to the right goes backwards. And see at the bottom where it says Chapters? Tap on this to get a scrollable table of contents. This lets you choose anywhere you want to go in the book. I'm going to pick Chapter 1 so I can show you the font settings. This is the part that's really important to a lot of people because the thing they like about ebooks is that they can change the font size to accommodate their eyesight. At the upper right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a letter A. Tap on that, and you'll get the Appearance screen. This lets you change the font size, the lighting of the book, and something a lot of people don't consider in all this. If you drag the Appearance section up, you'll see a section for book design. If you turn Publisher's Default off and then select Custom, you'll see a whole new group of settings. The one I want to talk about here is the one for line spacing. Most people only think about font size when they think about readability, but the space between lines is also very important. It makes things a lot easier on your eyes because the page is less crowded. So choose something like 1.5 or 2.0. I'm going to pick 2.0 and then go back to the body of the book by tapping on Hide. Now, isn't that a whole lot easier to read? There's also a bookmarks marker at the right-hand corner of the screen, but you probably won't need to set this unless you really want to remember a specific place. That's because Libby remembers where you left off in every item you've checked out. If you've checked out 10 books, it remembers where you left off in each one of them. Same with magazines and audiobooks. Just open that item and you're right where you left off. So now, let's hit the back button and we'll take a look at that magazine. Reading your magazine. So now we're back at your shelf, and it looks a little different. That's because it puts the last item you were in at the top and shows how far you got in it. See? It says that we got 2% of the way through the Alexander McCall Smith book. Now we want to take a look at National Geographic. Notice this time that it doesn't ask how we want to read it, it just says Open in Libby. Let's do that. And notice that this looks a lot like the ebook did. You have bars at the top and bottom that are for controls and navigation. These go away when you tap in the middle of the screen and come back when you tap there again. At the bottom of the screen, there's a table of contents that lets you pick which article you want to jump to. Of course, you could just read straight through, moving back and forth, just like an ebook. But there's one very important thing about reading a magazine in Libby that's different from reading an ebook. See the letter A at the top of the screen that let you change the font size in your ebook? Forget it. It doesn't work with magazines. Your magazine is laid out exactly as it would be in print. That text may be a little small, but there's a little trick Libby lets you do with magazine articles. Let me find one. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little button that says, Read this article. Tap on it, and you'll get a version of the article with larger text that you can scroll through. When you're done with that reader view, just drag it down off the page. Okay, now it's time to take a look at that audiobook. So tap in the middle of the screen to get the controls back and hit the back button. Now we're back on our shelf. Notice that now the magazine we just looked at is the first thing on the list, and it shows us when it's due back and how far we got in it. So now let's do that audiobook. Listening to audiobooks. So here we are, back at our shelf, ready to deal with our audiobook. But since most people will be listening on their phones, I'm going to switch over to my iPhone for this. Hang on a sec. Here we are at the shelf on my iPhone, and I'm going to scroll down to where the audiobook is. And here's our audiobook, The #1 Ladies Detective Agency. I can open it by tapping on Open in Libby, or I could just tap on the book. I'm just going to tap on the book. And now we get the screen for what I'm going to call the Libby player. If you've ever used any kind of audio player on a smartphone before, this should look fairly familiar to you. If you haven't, then let me explain a few important features. The big triangle button near the bottom of the screen is the play-pause button. Right now, the audiobook is paused, so you're looking at it as the play button. But if you tap on it, the audiobook starts playing and it becomes the pause button. And if you tap on it again, it becomes the play button. On the other side of that button, you'll see two little buttons, one for 15 seconds back and one for 15 seconds forward. These buttons let you skip backward or forward in 15-second increments. Why would you want to do that? Well, suppose you're listening to a book while taking a walk and a loud car goes by. Just tap on 15 seconds back, and you can go back to where you were before that car disturbed you. Or, speaking of being disturbed, suppose you're going through a particularly disturbing portion of the book. Tapping on 15 seconds forward lets you skim until you get past it. Below all this, you'll see the table of contents, just like with the eBook and the magazine. And if you tap on this, you'll get a scrollable table of contents that lets you skip directly to any chapter in the audiobook. Meanwhile, back at the player screen, you'll see little numbers on each side of the chapter name. These show you how many minutes you are from the beginning or end of the chapter. And at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see a slider that lets you slide to any position you want in the audiobook. There are lots of other settings you can play with, but I'll leave you to explore them on your own. As with the eBooks, Libby will remember where you left off in any audiobook you're listening to, no matter how many. Now let's go back to the Libby main screen on my iPad, and I'll talk about holds. Placing holds. Sometimes you want an item, but it's not available at the moment. Like this one, how to raise an elephant. No problem. I'll simply tap on the place hold button and I get a new screen that tells me how long I have to wait for it, how many copies are being used, and how many people are waiting in front of me. Good information to know. If I want to continue placing the hold, I simply tap on the place hold button. Now I'm given choices to read a sample, suspend the hold, keep browsing, or go back to the shelf. Let's go back to the shelf. I want to show you something. Previously, when we went to the shelf, we only concerned ourselves with what was in the loans section. That's the thing most people think about. But there's also a hold section. If you look at the top of the screen, it says we have one hold. If we tap on that, you'll see a list of everything we put a hold on. In this case, it's just one item. And there's a little button next to that says Manage Hold. Tap on that, and you'll get a section at the bottom of the screen like this. This is where you can suspend your hold, which is simply delaying it, or cancel it altogether. How does suspend work? Let's take a look by tapping on it. Here, you can suspend your hold for any number of days from 1 to 30, and then 180, which is 6 months. And when you do this, you stay at the front of the line while you're suspended. Isn't that great? But why would you want to suspend a hold? Well, maybe you're already reading a bit right now and aren't ready for this one yet, but will be in a few weeks. Maybe you're going on vacation in 6 months and want to be sure you have enough to read then. There are all kinds of reasons to suspend a hold. Of course, if you're going to have to wait 16 weeks anyway, like we will for this one, you might as well leave it as it is. But I'm going to suspend it for 180 days just so you can see what happens. Then tap on Update Hold. This will take you back to the shelf where you'll see that the hold has been suspended for 180 days. And when the item is ready for you, you'll get an email message. Now it's time to talk about returning items. Returning items. One of the great things about borrowing library items at Libby is that nothing is ever overdue. They just evaporate when your time is up. But if you finish an item ahead of time, why not return it early so that the next person can get it sooner? I mean, you'd want them to do that for you now, wouldn't you? Well, this is really quite easy to do. All you have to do is tap on Manage Loan, and a pop-up appears at the bottom of the screen that lets you return the item early or renew it. We're just going to look at Return Early. Tap on that, and you get a screen letting you know that you're returning the item. Tap on Return, and it tells you that you've actually returned it. Not sure? Go back to your shelf, and you'll see that we're down to just 2 items. Now let's finish up. Finishing up. And that's about it for getting started with Libby. Is there more to explore with Libby? Heavens, yes. But I think we've already gone on long enough here. So get started by checking out an eBook, an audiobook, or even a magazine or two, and see just how easy Libby is to use. We hope this has been helpful.